Hi, guys. Can you guys is everything I mean, can you see me and hear me still? Who dat? How you doing? Jose, Al? Oh, good. All right, great. I don't know if I'm even on the same thing, but I guess it worked. Okey doke. Glad to see you guys again. Okey doke. Hi, Andy. Dimitri, good to see you. Thaumaturge. Hello, Thaumaturge. I'm gl Oh, man. I'll tell you, I think they heard me bad-mouthing UPS and all of the other ones, and the whole thing with the tariffs. Okay, let's continue our discussion of what about watches? What would be a great topic? Oh, yeah, Prim. Yeah, I tell you, it's been years, Andy. Um, does anybody here, Matthew, I guess, Michael, Al, Hudat, Jose, all of you guys, do any of you have a Prim watch, by the way? It's a Czechoslovakian watch, not a Czechoslovakian, but a Czech watch. You showing my age. Pano, what? Hudat is that a Glashütte that you're talking about? Yeah, it a while back, a long time ago, a few years ago, I did a video on it, and I haven't thought about it since then. Yeah, Glashütte Pano. Right, there's one Hudat that I like, and that's the Pano Inverse. Really nice. The thing I sort of just I've lost my interest in anything owned by Swatch because they screwed them up, in my opinion. That's just my opinion, not everybody's, about using their silicone airspring because they no longer have regulators. And to me, that's what makes things much more interesting. Yeah, Andy, like I said, I had done that video years ago. Realized I've been doing these videos almost 10 years now, watch videos. These back, I think I started in 2016. So, there's a lot of sort of water under the bridge, so to speak. 2005 model. Okay. Oh, 2005 may be all right. I'm trying to figure out. Take a look, who dat. That what year did Swatch start putting silicone hairsprings in Glashütte original watches? They didn't put them in the ones with the double regulator on them, thank God. Michael, let's see. Is there a difference between an in-game watch and Grail? Fratello had a blog on it. In-game watch being you would be content with just this one watch, while a Grail is one that is unobtainable, a safekeeper. I think, you know, Grail is one. There's certain ones I would like to have a whole lot that I'm pretty sure, unless I win the lottery, I'll never have. The Luca Soprano, man, I would love to have one of those. Gribel and Forcé, that's another one. you know, Philippe Dufour. There are all kinds of watches. But what I found out with some grails that I had, and I've had more than one at a time. For years, my grail was the Ovale, the Parmigiani Fleurier Ovale Ponograph. And that thing, there were two versions that came out. One was 110,000 and the other was, I think, 55,000. And so I figured, well, that's just one of those things I'll never have. And then one came along and I had simply told the Brandon, who runs Horology by the Sea, I said, "Look, if one ever comes along at this price, give me a call." So he did, almost the same day. He said the guy who was selling it, I guess, just wanted the money, and there hadn't been a lot of other people who wanted to pay what he was asking for it, and so he gave it to me what I could afford. So in terms of Grail and sort of the end game, um, I don't know. I guess I don't think if I had a single watch, like say, okay, you get one watch, which one is it going to be? I'd have a heck of a time coming up with something. On the one hand, our first Larique watch has a lot of meaning and everything, and it works extremely well. By the way, too, these E2 number two, they improved the AGH 6801, it made it to 6802, and it is super accurate. Hey, Tim, how you doing? Um, Hi, Ray. Okay, you get your old pantograph. Boy, I tell you, the thing, Ray, Andy, the thing that you may want to do is to look up and see what movement's in it. I like Michael's topic, though, that he brought up about in-game watch and a grail watch. A grail watch, I guess your grails change or can change after time. And the other ones, the in-game watch would be a watch, the single watch, you had that watch, you could wear it all the time. I don't know. I can't think of an in-game watch. One is one I already have, and that's my Chronomet Souvain, FP Jordan. The reason I say that, it's got everything I want in a watch. One, it has a double barrel in parallel, which means it has a constant force element in it. It has it's hand wound, and then it has a power reserve indicator. And that watch is so easy to wear, and it's just sort of a nice watch. So I could have that as an in-game watch, but my goodness, I don't think it'd be. I don't know, what are you supposed to do? Have one in-game watch and drool about all the other ones? I don't have the stamina. I don't think our stamina, I should say, the will to have a single watch. I wish I did. I wish I could, or either that or I had the money for everything I wanted. What are some unique horology under 6,000? Only one I could find was a JLC True Seconds with deadbeat seconds. That's a great question, Hudat. What would be under 6K, something with unique horology? One I do know, and they're like, you can pick them up for $100. They're very unusual. They're Fabe Lubra, and they have the dual barrels in parallel. Okay, you can find those all over the place, and most of them are under $100. I got 3 of them. I broke one trying to find out more about it. So I took them apart, and I've got the pieces of the movement in my on my workbench here. So that's one I know, but excuse me. Mm. It's such a just I mean, it's sort of a fun watch, but it's not one that I don't know. It doesn't other than that one feature, it doesn't have a lot of other qualities to it. So, but that's under 6,000. The True Seconds, I'll tell you, the True Seconds by Jaeger-LeCoultre, that's a nice one. The problem with that, this is what I wish they would do, is that they took this really gorgeous, sort of innovative device that they put in the True Seconds that has something close to a remontoire, and but then they put the most boring dial on it. It looks like a classroom school clock time of thing, but that would be that would be a that would be a cool watch. That might be a good Larique project, since they don't make them anymore, and say, hey, we'd like to buy a bunch of those movements. If you got some around, you'd like to sell us, and then have it put together. I don't know. Hey, Finnegan the Ninja. My grail is the Bulgari Octo Finissimo tourbillon chronograph skeleton. Just love how it looks. You know, as someone who is, I'm not a fan of skeleton watches, and I'm certainly not a fan of chronographs, okay? But Finnegan the Ninja, the one that H. Moser came out with, and it has a tourbillon in it too. It's got a little dial at the top, and then in it, and then below the dial is a tourbillon, hand wound, which is cool, and skeletonized. See, one of the few skeletonized watches I like, but you know, yeah, you're right, $100,000. This is the thing that, man, problem with Grail watches is that you suddenly have a new and different Grail. The cycle never ends. Exactly. Exactly right, Matthew. Hi, Ray. I feel like Grail is something unobtainable like Philippe Dufour's Patek 6300. In-game watches are something that is either expensive or rare, but can realistically be obtained. I think it's a little different than that, at least from what Michael says. It seems to be like an only watch. If you're going to have one watch, the in-game watch, you say, okay, I'm going to sell all my other watches except for one, or sell them all and buy one. That would be an in-game watch, I would think. Who dat? I'm from India, and if quartz is your interest, then there's oh, by the way, who dat in India, that Fabre Luba that I mentioned was when they were putting in a lot of them were made in India. The Fabre Luba was owned by Tata, and then they sold them, and they're back in Switzerland again. But But those are the ones that I was talking about. I'll only collect one wife. Yeah, that's one is less expensive than more than one. Oh yeah, I know. There are a lot of watches that are way out of reach. Hey, Caesar, how you doing? Okay. let's talk about this. This is sort of one that I it not quite a contradiction in terms, but it's sort of fun to consider, and this is an affordable grail, and by affordable grail, what I mean is a watch you know exists, uh, and if you save up enough, you can't afford it. Only if you save a lot and sell a lot of your other watches. What kind of grails in that context, do you think would be a fun one to have? Hey, Andrew. You mean well, you got your ankle bracelet though, Caesar. So you can get around now. It's good to hear. I one of the things I'm always tempted to do, is to try to work out some kinda deal, like Larique has with, Agenor, but do it with sort of a make it a little more interesting, okay? I for a long time, I've been a big fan of Derek Pratt, which most people never heard of. He was an Englishman who was a great friend of of George Daniels. In fact, he and they hung out together, and they had also a mutual interest in cars. They had some really cool cars. And, anyway, um Derek Pratt worked for Urban Jorgensen, and, uh, he had this, a detent escapement that he was working on, and think I'm trying to think if he did it or not, but the other thing that he was working on was a remontoire that was directly part of the escape wheel. I'm not sure well, I've been looking at it a lot. But what I would like to do is and the guy who implemented it was Luca Soprano, Luca Soprano, who is an Italian Swiss watchmaker who lives in this little funky town. I forgot what canton it's in, but the guy's really a cool guy. And I thought, well, maybe we could get together with this guy and say, hey, look, Luca, this is what we'd like to do. Um, we've been working with Agenor, and all of the top guys know who Agenor is, so that's good. I'm sure he would too. And say, what we'd like to do is take the implementation of that Derek Pratt remontoire and make 100 watches with it. And see if he would say, "Hey, that's a great idea." Then I wouldn't, and then have all of the, I'll call it grunt work, should say the watchmaking work done by Agenor, and so it'd be sort of a three-way deal. Um, there's another one of those I'm working on that has a lot better chance of success, but it's the kind of thinking about how we can work out something so that we can have what we can't afford using in the normal channels. And that's the side of smuggling and theft. Yeah, Michael, there's that too. Letter, he's that's another one, Jose. Yes, he's another guy that I really like. Be made of white gold or platinum, case and bracelet. Haven't chosen a specific watch, but I scour the internet once a week. I'll tell you that that's one of the things. Um, if you scour the internet once a week, well, you're a little behind the curve. I do it all the time. You know, it you and you never know when you're going to bump into something. um, the Fabe Lubas I mentioned, where I really found sort of the elephant's graveyard of those things was on Etsy. You never know. I thought I'd found a great deal with a Armin Strom on the reel, but the fine print said, "Oh, by the way, this watch isn't working. You have to set it in." For, I thought that's sort of a crazy way. What do I think about Closame enamel for Larique? Listen, here's my response to that. No, never, ever, ever. Okay, now let me amend that a little. The cloisonné is done by Benjamin Chi. I think Benjamin's in Singapore, and he does a great job. Okay, after what we have been through with the dials at through Comblamine, which was touted as the best company around for doing Guy Lochet on dials, I'm off of that. Okay, it, it's something that if a person likes, they ought to go to somebody who specializes in it, like Benjamin, or he gets people who spends who specializes in it. I've been trying. I don't know. Do any of you guys know who Benjamin Shea is? He's a guy. I keep giving him a hard time. He's got this picture of himself. He looks like a thug, and I tell him that. I said, "You look like thug life in that picture. Why don't you get a decent picture of yourself?" And he says, "Well, you're going to be tough in this business." He's right, but looking like someone you wouldn't want to meet in a dark alley. Oh yeah, a Langenheim Albert. Ray, I I like the Albert too. Is the Albert the one they have two of them. One is an Albert and one is something else. Both of them, or one of them, has the Remontois by um, Marco Lang. That would be a nice one to have. One time you were able to buy, you could buy movements, the DM something or other. What is it called? MWD, anyway, 33.1. You could buy it. You could buy the movement separately. And man, I'll tell you, that was a great thing. 'Cause that is a fantastic movement. And they put it in this new one they did after Marco left, called the Hercules or something like that. But they didn't. I mean, they came up with 33.2, and the 33.2 had the center seconds. But otherwise, it's still essentially the Marco Lang one. Oh boy. Okay. Hi, Ali. 911 euro. How about regular enamel on your Larique models? An opinion. Okay, here's my opinion. When we did our first watch, um, what I did, I went out and I looked at all of the top people, including Philippe Dufour. And so I looked at Philippe Dufour's Simplicity 37, which is a 37 millimeter version of it. And in it, he had this little thing about, and he went to Medellin. This is why we chose Medellin on the first one. And he talked about the difference between lacquer and enamel. He said, first of all, a good lacquer, you can't tell the difference really uh, between a good lacquer and enamel. He said, beside, my God, the stuff you go through. I mean, when you fire a true enamel, you fire it. And sometimes they crack and break, and there are all kinds of problems with it. But Dufour said, he said, you don't have any of those problems with lacquer, and it's a lot lighter, so you don't, and not as thick, and so you can have a thinner watch without all of the kinds of issues that can come up with enamel. So my opinion on that was stick with lacquer and never have another guilloche. This one's got guilloche, but what we went through, it's just not worth it. The gyro tourbillon. What's this thing with tourbillons? Tourbillons on a wristwatch is sort of like sort of feather bedding. I'll put it that way. Um, ah, since you mentioned tourbillons, let me show you my tourbillon, one of my two tourbillons. Who dat? You can make your own tourbillon. I got a tourbillon I made, 100 bucks or something. Okay, here's the tourbillon. All right. Essentially, what the tourbillon is doing, it's putting the balance wheel into different positions so that gravity doesn't pull it all down in one direction. Now, this was made for the tourbillon was made for pocket watches, and so pocket watches that makes a lot of sense. But with a wristwatch, your wrist is moving, in all kinds of different directions. Now, if you're a couch potato, maybe not, but otherwise, it's sort of it's like you know something that is there for decoration, sort of fun to look at, but it's and they're terribly expensive unless you make one your own. And where's my tourbillon? I got my little tourbillon. I got one from China, from AliExpress, and I put it together in a case and everything, and it still works perfectly. And I rarely ever wear it. In fact, I rarely ever bring it out and wind it up and play with it now that I have my new one I can play with, my big plastic one. So that's my view of tourbillons, is that they're cool, yeah, and they represent some real skills in watchmaking. So I got somebody wants to spend that money on a tourbillon, okay, but I just don't see them as an actual remedy to not well, sort of constant force, I guess, since you wanna have a constant one, and if you have with a pocket watch, if you have gravity pulling everything down one way, a tourbillon certainly would be helpful. Yeah, Allie, we're praying. I gotta get off my duff. There's a project. Actually, it was last November when I visited Geneva. I started something, and then we got just everything blew up with Etude number two with the dial problem. It's moving along again now. And the other thing was with then these tariffs, God. Uh so anyway, I've been less than eager to start a new project until I mean, we have the one that Abdul started. He's got a great one going with the jumping hour, but sort of next level. I think so far I think we ought to call them this. The first group of watches that we had etude groups. They were sort of the etude models. The second one we have the uh, Air Zulu and Air Sultan. That's the Air series, spelled hour. It's hour in French, Heure. So I think the next uh, group ought to be sort of the constant force, something with constant force. And we'll see. That would be we've got to corner the right people to do that. I was going to talk to. I mean, every time I go to Watt Time Show, I end up talking with Christine Hutter, and say, "Hey, what about that deal we talked about with getting those hematic movements. And, she finally said, "Okay, well, we could do it this way. I could sell you guys 20, that's it." And so every year I talk to her, she says, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, we'll do that in 2 years from now." And then 2 years from now from then, she says, "Oh, we need 2 more years." So I sort of given up on that. She's just a nice person and doesn't wanna, you know, so I don't think that's going anywhere, but Ali has, made some initial contacts, and I gotta talk to Edward Milan when we're in, New York, so see if there's something, but I don't know. I think that we oughta, get I really wanna get that Luca Supra but I don't know if that'll be possible. What about Callisis? Okay, oh, wait, let me Indie File, I would continue to watch this channel. I have oh, good. I've sent you down what I've done, Al, is lead you down the garden path. Caesar, okay, Calcis. I would love to have one of those. I really would. Maybe get together with Vincent Calabrese and Agenor and say, "Hey, you know, tell you what we're gonna do. You don't have to do anything, Vincent, except pretend you're the boss." All right. There's sort of like he's a really independent guy, Vincent Calabrese is. And I know that he had a proof of concept for the Callisis using a Solida. But if we could do it with a Solida, why not try it with an AGH, like our AGH 6800 nothing, and sort of put the Calcis in there for that. That would be an interesting project. What it would cost, how long it would take, whether or not Agenor would go along with it, whether or not Vincent Calabrese would go along with it, who knows? But it's not something we can sort of, we can make inquiries on. See, the thing of it is that there's so many great opportunities, and I just think that the one weight we have of this whole stupid thing that's going on. Matthew, central impulse chronometer. Yes, I'd be tempted to wear it dialed down. Make the back to front, just hands and transparent dial would be my ideal skeleton. Matthew, I'm not crazy about skeletonized watches for this one primary reason. It's hard to tell time on them. That's why I like the skeleton that H. Moser did. They have a separate little dial with a solid background. You can tell the time very easily. On the other hand, so many of these skeleton watches, Roger Dubuis, I think the brand has almost been ruined uh, by nothing but skeletonized stuff. Here you have one of the top movements anywhere. Just about every Roger Dubuis watch, the modern ones and the older ones, all have Geneva seals, which really requires to go through quite a bit of testing. So you have this great watch with this, you know, why do they think that design is the one doing it? Now, maybe they're making money from it for the type of audience they have. I don't know, but man, I'll tell you, it's great watches, but you got the skeletonized thing. The thing that I like better than skeletonized is what Marco Lang did with the Georg, is that here you have these finger bridges on the balance on the wheel train, and so you can see basically you flip over a Georg and you can see the entire horology, and that I think makes it really interesting. The one I have by Marco Lang the Frederick II uses a trigonal bridge, and that does a pretty good job of showing everything. But boy, I tell you, the one on Georg is just fantastic. And I think who oh man, there's a Russian watch company, the one that Michael Margolis is the US rep for. Who is that? I think they're sort of Russian anyway, they're Swiss now. They did something with a similar thing with the, finger, bridges on the cases. Oh, Michael. Um, we would have to get something out of that if we gave them, if they wanted to use our AGH 6850, okay? That's our Zulu movement. Um, I don't know what I I don't know how I'd feel about it after going through everything we've been going through on it, but that kind of idea is not a bad one, something like that. You know, what I was thinking of, Michael, was saying, "Okay, here we got this movement. We've now that we've got, I guess we'll have 4 by the time they're finished with, Air Sutant." Is something like that, is saying, "Okay, well, here's the movement. Now what we want you to do is to make a H. Moser case, dial, hands, the whole work, do all of that for us, and then we'll have, the, AGH 68 whatever put in there and call it a day, and then we'll have a." I don't know, that's sort of an interesting idea. When I mentioned that idea to, Nicholas Viderek, he said, you better have something for, to tell Edouard Mélon what advantage there would be to doing that with Lyrique. And I can think of lots of advantages for them. What I'm wondering is what the advantages for us would be. I don't know. Hey, Goldfinger, how you doing, man? A Breguet subscription, the one, with a single hour hand. I don't like single hand watches, Caesar. It's just me. I like them with 2 hands, at least. Okay, Allie, yeah, we'd have to do that. Allie, I know don't we need to sort of polish the approach on that one first. Breguet subscription. You know, what I would like is to get one of the older brigades with and use the, Daniel Roth movement. Now, the Daniel Roth movements that were used in the, sort of the revision, not revision, but revival of Brigade from the Near Dead, Daniel Roth was one of the main characters in there, and I think he used Lamania bases for the movement. And now they've got God knows what they're putting in the thing with that stupid silicon. But on a subscription, I like that idea because essentially I think that's pretty much what we're doing, but not with one hand. I mean, I But maybe if people want that, the thing of it is that the thing about Lyrique, we have all different kinds of people with different ideas, and, so we can do all kinds of stuff with that. Yeah, Dimitri, that's pretty much it. Andrew, it's not quite the same, but if you'd like to be able to see the majority of the movement from the dial side, okay. Albeit not too clearly, there's Dornbluth and Sons, translucent green dial. Yeah, um, I'm perfectly happy with turning a watch over and looking at the back and seeing it. What do I have here? Ah, I'll probably drop something and break it. I also have mystery movements that I got and started working on. I believe this one, whoop, this is the Soprod A10. And I've had a devil of a time, not with the movement, but with the case. And I've been the case and the dial. I have the dial for it. I probably have the hand somewhere, but apparently it's got, as you can see, it's set up for center seconds, and then at 3 o'clock. Whoops, let me see if I can put it here. And then at 3 o'clock, it has the date window. The unusual thing about this is that as far as cases are concerned, this one you open it from here or from the back, so you can open it from either end of it. And I think they probably made that especially for me because I'll drop the movement out of one end or the other. So there's it's those kinds of things. There's sort of those of you who are members of the elite group called the pretentious watchmakers. There's an idea, Michael. How do we benefit from that, Michael? That's what I want to know. We've got, I mean, what would really be nice, we need some guys to do more work on the thing for us. Hi, Velvia man. Velvia man. Yeah, I don't know if you were here earlier when we were talking about it's sort of the whole issue with enamel dials versus lacquer. Um, I do like anordained uh, their dials, their fire dials. But I tell you, if you've ever read some articles about RGM, Roland Murphy's company in Pennsylvania, one of the things he talks about was how many dials he has to fire to get one that works. And so they can be a whole lot of things. And right now, I have a bad case of dial phobia. Believe me. Maybe once we get sort of move away from the Etude number 2, uh, I'll, I'll sort of reconnect with that. But man, I tell you, dials can be very simple. When we did our first one, wasn't no problems at all with a dial. There were people who ended up grousing about the Fiedler hand because of the way that they set them up. God, I'll tell you that if that was the worst problem of our problems, I'd be dancing in the street. Oh, I see what you're saying, Michael. Yeah, in other words, that what we'll do is work out a movement, some movement with, Agenor, and then but see and we could do it with H. Moser with our permission because the policy that Agenor now has is that if your company or your whatever is responsible for the payment and creation of the movement, then it's yours and nobody else's. So, that doesn't mean you can't have a certain kind of base, but yeah, I see what you mean, Michael. Maybe that's something that's worth. Um, let's see. Yeah. Yeah, we do one of those things, Lyrique X H. Moser, assuming we'd be first in line. It may be H. Moser X Lyrique. Yeah, Ali, I think after everything we've been through with Etude number 2, I can understand that. I like them both. This is worked out pretty well. Hey, Jeff. Oh, the one on the loco. No, I didn't. I'll tell you, I have been bogged down with all kinds of stuff. It's sort of like the dial problems that we've been having are sort of like the nightmare that keeps on reoccurring. But we are moving. I think I was just talking. This will give you an idea of how what you have to sort of juggle. Okay, at one time when we first started it, Agenor, a company called Made, MAD apostrophe E. Sometimes, as the British might say, it's too clever by half. I mean, anyway, the Made company. What they are, they do the assembly of the parts of the watch. The Agenor assembles the movement by hand. Made assembles the watch also by hand. Okay, so our designer Matu, Made, and Agenor were all in the same building. Okay, and they had been there for quite some time. What happens is that the Comblamine was run by a guy who was a friend of our designer. Well, he left and problems ensued after that. That's one of the things. Then the on the strap, we tried to send the strap. Now, this was my fault because I had checked and double checked with ostrich straps and they weren't on sites. They weren't on the sites list. So I thought, no problem. However, in the United States, they had you need to get a special fish and game license, okay, for ostrich legs. You don't need the site stuff. Whoops, hope that's not stopping again. But you do need the fish and game license. So we had to get that. And just one thing after another on the thing. So anything that will simplify it, I'm all for. Anyway, Jeff, back to your thing on a loco. The I haven't really had that time. I just there's all of these other things are going on. Michael, that would be my guess too, Michael. Oh, okay. Well, Ali solved that problem. Okay, Jeff. Well, I solved the problem for you. they were inquired and they're in series. Hey, Dimitri, what do you guys think of the Ming watches? The horology is not necessarily remarkable, but the design language is very unique. Wow. Yeah, that's a good question, Dimitri. I can give you my opinion. I always start with the movement as the most important thing because that's the horology. I'm finding that everything else that goes with it is important too, and especially the design to have a watch that you can look at and use and so forth. That's one of the reasons I'm not crazy about skeletonized. But that's an interesting point. Some of Ming's more expensive watches use Agenor movement. That's true. Their cheaper ones use ETA. See, this is the. It seems that Ming is pretty much, as far as I know, Ming is pretty much upfront about that. In other words, they'll tell you what the movement is. They'll brag about it if it's Agenor movement. The the other ones, there are relatively up there watches with ETA movements that are really pretty good. Chaumet used them, and the Chaumets, but then they would put in like something special with it, like a Agonese, two Agonese deers. So you have it's ETA, yeah, but they put this other element in. I think as long as you're upfront about it. See, this is what drives me crazy about Breitling and IWC is that so many of their movements appear to be in-house movements given the caliber designations. Like IWC will have IWC 123 or whatever, and Breitling will have B something something something. They're both using ETAs and Solitas, and that's sort of you have to find out the code words. And to me, that is really masking it, and so they can charge more for watches with cheaper movements. Okay, ETA movements in and of themselves, some of them are quite good, by the way. And then they have four levels. You take their top level and their COSC level. Those things are nice, very nice movements. But they don't cost as much as it would cost, like what we eat with from Agenor. They're very expensive, but they're acting like that's what they have. Like they have these top level movements, so they do make their own movements, but they're for much more expensive watches. And I think most of their watches they actually sell are using cheaper movements, and they're still overpriced. Ali, on time only movements, which ones are better than others? I don't know. That's a good question. To me, the obvious answer, time only, would be how they handle constant force. If they have something in there, that's why I like the Chronometsu vein. It's got the double barrels in parallel. So that's how, and that's time only, definitely time only with unless you count the power reserve indicator. The No, you take one of the most expensive watches and one of the best watches in the world, which is Philippe Dufour's Simplicity. Here you have something that is incredible horology, and nothing but incredible horology, all of it handmade and done uh, with very high standards, okay? Now, if you have a watch and it's got a single barrel, and then it's got the wheel train and everything else, pretty much like these guys, but they're done by top watchmakers. You got a different watch. You have a built-in almost constant force. If we look for a constant force on this, oddly enough, it's with the second hand, because the second hand has the Agonese gear, which is probably the best gear you can get that would guarantee non-slippage, because it has a little spring between the teeth. That is one of the things. Also, too, if we have to learn how to use it, is the Agon pit regulator, which is a big innovation on that. Take care, Michael. You know what? I've got to run too. I'm way over my allotted time, so I've got to take off too. Hey, listen, I want to thank everybody for coming. I sorry about the mess up we had initially. I'm glad we found a solution that brought it back after trying the usuals didn't work. Anyway, thanks again, guys. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Take care.